Good morning. Welcome to another edition of our podcast, One Door at a Time. This is the Detroit episode, and I'm really excited for our guest today. I've known this educator, this brother, for about 4 or 5 years now. Uh, have admired his work, have admired the partnership, and I just think that this episode will really help us understand not just the why of the work, but more important, the implementation and the execution of the work and just his philosophy, his perspective, his practice of how to really work with community partners and vendors, and just the execution, the flawless execution that has taken place in his district. So I welcome Dr. Stile Simmons to the set. We're on location in the D. And I always have to say, what up, doe, to all my people in the D. And so, what up, doe, Dr. Simmons?
What up,
So,
though?
absolutely. Talk to me and share with us your initial journey. Like, from, growing up, those things that have kind of shaped you into the educator you are, and then your journey through education. What Share with us
Okay,
about it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It has been a wonderful partnership. Working with Concentric over the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So my journey, it started in Detroit.
Hmm.
It started in Detroit. I was the product of two loving parents who at one point eventually separated. So for the majority of my childhood, I was, raised by my mom.
Mhm.
Although my dad was, he was still around. And he still made sure that we were provided for. But we lived in some tough situations.
Hmm.
I grew up on the west side of Detroit,
Okay.
Finkel and Myers area.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, fairly tough
Yeah.
neighborhood. So you had to go through all of that, and I was largely shaped, by my time there. So I went to school, DPS, primary school,
Okay.
elementary school at Paul Robeson, which is now Loyola High School
Yes.
on
Yeah.
Finkel and
Yeah.
can't remember the cross street. And then I went to Guest Middle School, which
Okay.
is right on Finkel and Myers, and then I spent my freshman year at Cooley High School.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yes.
So my freshman year at Cooley High School, and then my mom, she was fortunate enough to pull herself up by her bootstraps, and she finished her time at Mary Grove College,
Yeah.
got an internship with Michigan Bell at the time, and then got a full-time job, full-time position there, and we moved out to Oak Park.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
lived right off 3 houses off 8 Mile
Yep.
in Oak Park. And so I graduated from Oak Park.
Okay.
And while there, I played sports and worked, and just, I had dreams of going on to college or the military, as my mom
Okay.
put it. She said, you got to do one or the
Yeah,
other.
you gotta go one or the other.
And so, I went off to Saginaw Valley State University, and I spent 3 years there, really more or less growing up.
Hmm.
There, my time there was spent, maturing.
Absolutely.
We'll put it that way.
What was when were you when you were in Detroit? When were you? What was the 70s, 80s?
Yeah, 80s.
How
Yeah, so
how was Detroit then
oh, it
during
was
the
tough.
80s?
I mean, you ask anybody about
Yeah.
Detroit in the 80s. Yeah. Oh, I mean, the crack epidemic, HIV/AIDS. Late in the late 90s. I'm sorry, late 80s, early 90s. Black men were considered an endangered species,
Hmm.
and so it was a tough time. And so that's why my mom and dad always impressed upon me to either you go to college or you go to the military. You got to do something productive with your life. And so I enrolled at Saginaw Valley State University. Didn't have the best test scores, so I had to take some remedial classes.
Hmm.
I was a classic underachiever at that time. Um, Spent 3 years there maturing, and then finally I kind of got my act together. And it really, I would say it was divinely ordered.
Okay.
Um, you know, my roommates and I were watching what was happening in '92 with the Rodney King situation.
Yeah. Okay.
and
Yeah.
you know, it sent the nation into shock,
Yes.
right? And so I remember just watching, and I'm like, wow, why is it that um, black people have such a hard time, in this country, and what can be done about it? And so I began just kind of going to the library, something I had never done outside of just to complete homework or
Mm-hmm.
classwork assignments. And I began reading about Martin Luther King. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X at that time, and I just found myself, you know, completing all of my classwork, homework assignments, and then staying up to like 3 in the morning reading Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X. Um,
So that maturation was
yeah,
occurring.
Ivan Van Sertima,
Yeah.
Chancellor Williams,
Yeah. Yeah.
really studying, about, African American history, and then going back to ancient African civilizations, and really understanding who we are, and where we come from. And that inspired me. And so I wanted to share what I was learning with others.
Mm-hmm.
And now, by my very nature, I'm introverted.
Mm-hmm.
So, to be a classroom teacher is not something I had envisioned. But when I had this knowledge and I wanted to share with others, I mean, I found myself going to the mall in Saginaw and stopping people and asking them, do you know about your
Wow. Okay.
history? And I
Yeah.
mean, it was to that level. And so,
Maturation and consciousness.
yeah, yeah,
Maturation and consciousness.
yeah.
What was your major? What was your undergrad?
Elementary education.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
at major.
Eventually.
Okay.
Now, originally, I changed my major like 3 different times. I wanted to be an accountant. That didn't work. I wanted to go into business administration. That didn't work. I wanted to be a sociologist. I didn't even know what that was, but I
Yeah.
just knew that I did fairly well in those classes.
Okay.
And then eventually, again, I wanted to share the knowledge that I had learned, or that I was learning with others, because I thought it would be, helpful, liberating, and all of that. And so I found my path, and it led me to high school originally, because I wanted
To teach in high school.
yeah, because I wanted to teach African American studies or literature.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I had like some like pre-service teaching contact at Saginaw Arthur Hill High School,
Okay.
and it was in a history class, and I kind of learned, sat and learned and watched the teacher, and the students and all that. That was, that environment was totally new for me. Um, you know, from the other side, not being a student, but being someone there to, kind of help educate the students.
Was that high school primarily African American or?
African American, Hispanic, and there were a few, white students at
Okay.
the high school as well.
Okay.
Um, so then I got an opportunity to just kind of do a couple lessons, and share some of the things that I had learned about the Harlem Renaissance and all of that. And it went well, man. And I was turned on. And so eventually, I matured to the point where I felt that I needed to leave Saginaw
Okay.
and come back home. And so I talked to my mom about it, and she said, "Well, you can come back home and stay in the basement. You're gonna pay rent and all that." And so I enrolled at Wayne State University.
Okay.
And so um, from there, I didn't look back. I mean, I was completely focused. I was on the dean's list.
Now this is for your master's?
No,
Oh, this is the
still
complete
undergrad.
for undergrad. Okay.
I was 24 when I got my bachelor's. I mean that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When I say when I was a classic underachiever, I was.
Wow.
Had the ability,
Uh-huh.
but just wouldn't always apply it. Inconsistent with the application of knowledge and skills and all of that. But finally, it came together for me, and I
Mhm.
never looked back since then. So I graduated from Wayne State University. Elementary education was my focus. And again, my path originally was high school, but
Mhm.
when I was told at Wayne State that there weren't many high schools in the metropolitan area that offered African American studies as a course,
Mhm.
and that I might be delayed by another semester in terms of student teaching,
That's right.
I couldn't
Okay.
do it. I couldn't
Yeah.
wait because I was already behind.
Yes. That's right.
And so I was part of a African American study group. We met on 7 Mile near Greenfield at Mama's Kitchen, and there's a third grade teacher there, and she said, "You have you heard of Paul Robeson Academy? You know, Ray Johnson." I said, "Nah, no, I haven't, but I did go to a school called Paul Robeson, but it was different. You know, it was a different school." And so she said, "You really need to reach out to them and see, what they got going on." And it was an African-centered academy in Detroit, back in the
Uh-huh.
90s. They had the Malcolm X and the Marcus Garvey and the Paul Robeson Academy, and might had a few others. And so I did that. I reached out to him, and he said, "Come on in." And, so I took a tour. And then he asked me about, my career aspirations and all that. And he said, "You need to maybe volunteer here." And so I did. I would go in every Friday when I didn't have classes and just kind of volunteer, and started out in a first grade classroom supporting Ralph Bland.
Wow.
You might have heard of him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So working with Ralph Bland. And then I moved on to a third grade classroom working with the teacher there. He was pretty dynamic. And the rest is history, man. I thought I was going to, actually end up teaching at Paul Robeson Academy, but at the time, Detroit or DPS had other plans, and so they placed me. My student teaching assignment was at Mann
Uh-huh.
Elementary School,
Yeah.
and so they placed me there. The principal there was dynamic, and there were a couple other brothers there,
Uh-huh.
working, at the elementary level, which was kind of rare.
Yeah, I was about to say you,
And,
you don't see many African American male
yeah.
teachers in elementary school.
Right. And so she recruited me, and I was teaching. My student teaching was at the second grade level.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I kind of like second grade, but I thought third grade might be a better fit. And so I asked her, I said, well, if I stay, can I teach third grade? She said, "Yep, you got it."
Wow.
And so I stayed there, and I was there for 8 years. I actually ended up teaching second, third, and fourth grade during my time there. And then I got a call from downtown, second to last day of school one year,
Uh-huh.
and they said, "Hey, we remember you, and we think you should apply for this Reading First literacy coach position."
Okay.
And so I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that, I had aspirations of becoming an administrator, at some point.
When did that kick in? Those aspirations
I would
for
say maybe
administration.
year 5 for
Okay.
me, you know, um, yeah, I would say year 5, but I still, really enjoyed what I was doing in the classroom. I mean, we were doing things, well beyond the classroom. We started a Cub Scout pack where we were taking kids to summer camp, fall camp. We had taking kids to sleepovers at the science center,
Mm-hmm.
taking them to Pistons games, Tiger games, and all of that. Really working with them well beyond the walls of the classroom, and just trying to help mold and shape, our young men.
My
Um,
mind's turning because I'm starting to see where we're going to get to at towards the end. Why I'm starting to see. I'm starting to see how what where the orientation where it's coming from. Yes,
yeah.
their origin. Yep.
So I applied for the literacy coach position. I interviewed, got the position, and I was relocated or reassigned from Man to a school, Ma'at Imhotep, which is
Mm-hmm.
on the east side, Seymour and Gratiot area. It was it was a different experience. Very tough neighborhood.
Now you're talking
Um,
ancient Kemet. You're talking ancient Kemet. My
ve-
Imhotep. Yes.
very tough neighborhood. Lots of challenges. Um, any way you look at it, it was a challenging situation. But
And this was DPS school, not a charter school.
DPS, yes,
Okay.
is now closed.
Okay.
But in my 2 years there, we received, or we were recognized by the then superintendent, William, and I apologize, can't remember his last name, but recognized as one of the top 10 schools in growth in
Wow.
reading. And so I had already enrolled at Wayne State in the doctoral program
Okay.
to pursue my doctorate in reading, language arts, and literature. And that recognition really solidified for me what it was I was to do, to become an administrator who was singularly focused on improving literacy achievement for students, especially for our African American boys, because we know the statistics.
Yes, absolutely.
When you look at the performance of any group, African American boys are typically at the bottom, especially when it comes to literacy rates. And so, my thinking was, whatever we do to help improve literacy for African American boys is going to help others as well.
Absolutely.
And so from there, I got an opportunity to become an elementary school principal in a small town in Northwest Michigan called Baldwin. And it's not that I just kind of randomly chose that place. My wife is from the area, and so they knew that I was an educator. I was working at Detroit, and so they had always expressed interest in me, possibly coming there at some point to either teach or being an administrator. And so when Detroit was going through its phase of closing buildings.
Yeah, because now we're into the early 2000s, right?
No, we're actually around 2006, 2007.
When they start with because
so,
Cooley closed, Kettering.
Yeah, so the building, my aunt was slated to be closed, and they were going to reassign me to some other building on the east side of Detroit. And, I was willing to go and, continue to do the work. But again, some folks from Baldwin called and said, hey, we need an elementary school principal, and that administration was always my goal.
Okay.
And so I applied, I got the job. We moved from Detroit to Baldwin. And
how was the difference between DPS and then Baldwin? Like, what are some of the key differences?
Well, I mean, Baldwin is rural and considered isolated. So it presented some different challenges. But, when you look at the impact of poverty, I mean, poverty is something that knows no race. It transcends a lot.
Okay.
And so, this was a predominantly white or Caucasian area, which had a significant African American population because of Idlewild, which is right next door to Baldwin.
Okay. All right.
And so I would say 53% of our students were white or Caucasian, and about 42% African American. The rest were like Hispanic and other.
Okay. Wow.
And so,
okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty diverse area, especially for Northwest Michigan.
Okay. I never would have guessed.
With a rich history due to Idlewild.
Okay.
Right. And so I served as elementary school principal there, and had 2 really outstanding years. And then I was recruited by a charter management company, Mosaica. And so they had a couple of assignments that they had pitched to me, an assignment in, I think, in Youngstown, Ohio, and then one in Washington, D.C. Well,
yeah.
I was very curious about the D.C. assignment, and it was their largest operation. So they had, it was one charter, but 4 buildings spread across Southeast DC.
Southeast.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ward 7 and 8.
Oh, yeah.
And so everything kind of worked out, and I ended up moving to DC. Actually stayed in Alexandria, but working in DC and Southeast at Howard Road Academy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very, yeah.
So, so worked there for 2 years and gained invaluable experience, from the leadership level down to, really kind of better understanding the charter school movement and what you could and couldn't do.
Because it was so, like, DC, outside of New Orleans, now even Detroit, largest population of charter schools. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so spent two really good years there, and then the folks from Baldwin came calling because the superintendent was going to retire, and they asked if I was interested in coming back as superintendent. And I thought about it and talked to my wife about it, and she really wasn't thrilled about being out east, so far away from her family. Okay. So we talked for about a month, and then eventually made the decision to apply and interview, and got the position. I spent 7 years in Baldwin as superintendent, and we did some really, outstanding things, in my time there. And then Westwood The opportunity became available, and so I applied. Went through the interview process, and I was selected as superintendent of Westwood. And I'm just now completing my 5th year.
Talk to me about your early years as a superintendent. Like, what are some of the key things that you took away or learned and that kind of shaped you early on as a superintendent? Because you just have a very you're one of the most even people I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's an evenness about you that I think is admirable because I'm not even. But it's the calming of the seas. There's a presence that you have that I've come to admire, and you really talk. Share with what you learned early on.
Well, I would say I learned early on that you have to have a sense of purpose, and I would say that I've been blessed with a sense of purpose. Um, Something I would say, early on in my career, I didn't think I was the most patient person.
Okay.
So I learned how to be patient, because when you look at the work that we're responsible for, shaping the future, shaping, the lives of children so that they become, adults who can contribute to society, to raise a family, and to even correct some of the ills of
Yes,
society.
absolutely.
That's a tremendous, responsibility. And so you have to take it seriously. And I wanted to see it happen like yesterday.
Yes.
But you learn that not everyone sees things that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to work to try to help people understand the vision, and even create a shared vision. And hopefully you have the right people in place, so that you can create such a shared vision that would help provide the type of education that our students need and deserve. Sometimes doesn't always work that way, but you still got to do the work. And
Was it
so,
what you thought it was going to be of being a superintendent? Did you? Yeah. Was the reality different from the perception going in, or vice versa?
so I just wanted to have more influence over what happened in schools.
Okay.
Now, what kind of took me for a loop was the whole community piece.
Okay.
So, as superintendent, even different from being a CAO for a charter school,
Mm.
as superintendent, you're seen as a community leader,
Yes.
and having I guess cut my teeth early, as a small school superintendent,
Mm-hmm.
in a small community, you know, I served on many different boards. I had direct contact with, the who's who, so the president of the local bank,
Yeah.
the commissioners, the Rotary Club, um, any organization that was trying to, advance or help the community improve, I was part of that process. And so that took some time to adjust to, because within that, you got your politics and all of that. And again, my focus originally was to just come in and help, students improve in reading, and then also improve in math as well, and help teachers become better teachers, and so that parents would be happy with
Mm-hmm.
what we were doing, and then even getting parents on board as educational partners. That was my original focus, and that's what I kind of thought that as superintendent I would really be able to focus on.
Uh-huh.
But then you learn that no, you deal
Because you're
with a
always
lot of,
on. You're always on.
yeah, yeah, you're always on, especially in a smaller community. I tell people, I say, in that community, I was really never off unless I left it to just go,
Mm-hmm.
to someplace else to go grocery shopping,
Yeah.
or to do whatever. Because at the grocery store, at the gas station, you're seeing parents, and you're seeing the people that you're working with outside of the school, and so you were always on. It's like you're in a fishbowl.
That took some getting used to initially.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. But I'm glad I had the experience, because, I carried that experience, with me, to Westwood.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I see the importance of being a strong community partner, understanding the importance and the role of being a community leader, and someone who is not just, helping to improve literacy achievement rates, but also helping to improve the community as well.
So you're in Westwood. What was your initiation or adjustment into Westwood? And tell us a little bit about Westwood because it's kind of unique as a school district, in the
Yeah,
sense of where you pull from.
right, right. Yeah, so it is very unique, and I like history, so I've kind of inquired, um, from others, those who are, equally as interested in history, um, about the history of the area, and it was largely shaped by Henry Ford and others.
Tell us
I,
tell us a little bit about the history of Westwood. Like how was it
yeah,
shaped and stuff?
so we serve the communities of Dearborn Heights and Inkster.
Yes.
And so
Very different.
yeah, very different. It's becoming, yeah, it's very different. So I would say that it's a challenge because you still have those in Inkster, in the city of Inkster, who don't fully recognize Westwood as being a school district in the city of Inkster.
Yes. Yes.
And on the Dearborn Heights side, you still have those who kind of see Westwood as maybe an afterthought,
Mm-hmm.
because in Dearborn Heights, you have three school districts:
Yes.
Crestwood to the north,
Yes.
which is a bit more prosperous.
Yes.
Then you have Westwood, which is in the center.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have District number 7,
Mm-hmm.
which is south and east.
Yes.
And so Westwood is in a unique spot. And so the first challenge that I had was, we had to help people understand what was Westwood and where
Mm-hmm.
Westwood was located. And because, when I told people that I was moving on to Westwood, they were like, "Where's Westwood?
Yeah.
What is that? Is that a charter school?" And so, you had to explain, no, it's headquartered in Dearborn Heights, but we also serve the community of Inkster as well.
Yes.
And, so I would say, well, have you heard of Robichaud High School? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we know Robichaud, but they didn't know Westwood as the school district. And so one of the first things that we did was that we changed the mascot at the elementary and the middle schools, because they were, the Tigers and the Baby Bulldogs and the Thundercats, and Robichaud were the Bulldogs. So we all became Bulldogs
Okay.
because, you got 5 schools.
Mm-hmm.
We should all be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if we're looking at this from a community standpoint, where students start at the elementary level, their aspirations should be to eventually get to Robichaud, do well there, graduate, and then move on to college,
Mm-hmm.
university, college, or the armed forces. Um, and so that was the first challenge of many.
Okay.
And then we had the challenge with the facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the last bond that was passed in that community was in 1958,
Oh wow.
and that was to build Robichaud High School. And so there were some sinking funds that had been passed, prior to my time there. But the last one that was passed was in the late 90s, and it only, it extended, for a 10-year period. So
Mm-hmm.
mid 2000s, money had dried up pretty much, and so our facilities are old, and so we had to address that issue, and then we just had to also address the issue of literacy achievement, and just student achievement overall. And
Absolutely.
that's kind of where we're focused right now. Now that we got oh, and the finances weren't the healthiest either. So now we're financially solvent.
Wow.
We have we're addressing our facilities issue,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're really focused on student achievement. And with the student achievement piece, we need to address the issue of chronic absenteeism and
Mm-hmm.
truancy.
So, one of the unique things about Westwood, working with Westwood, partnering with Westwood, is the intentional thought from everybody, whether it be the building principals that I've had conversations with, whether it be your administrative staff, I mean, it definitely stems from you, from my perspective and my interaction. I remember during the pandemic, everyone's trying to figure out what to do and how to adjust because there was nothing, no blueprint, no playbook.
Right.
Um, and it was the very first time for me that year I did, other than October, I did every home visit for Westwood myself. Uh, so I think that year we did like 947, and I did almost like 890 of them. But I learned so much about the community. Without, it's going to sound partial. It was the best home visit experience I ever had because it was so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, I mean, I just remember the streets. And then, but it's interesting because you can go on Annapolis Road and you can go a little bit further up and you're in literally public housing, or right around the corner is public housing.
Right.
And then across the street, someone has bought a parcel of land and built a mansion on it.
Right.
I remember doing, I forget the name. There's these apartments that are behind, not Thorn, the elementary school, that down
Daily.
Beach Daily,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They're white apartments. But literally, I've never seen across the street from the apartments, I've never seen mansions that big before.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's like 4 of them back, like right next to each other.
Trust me, I know.
And it was just in the conversation. It was just a rich thing. But what I'm so enamored with is your flawless execution. So our goal as an organization is to do around 25% student re-engagement, where we visit a home, students then come back after the visit and they stay.
Right.
You are averaging in the 80s for most cohorts. How are you executing so flawlessly where everybody else seems to have challenges?
Well, so I think it starts with having, the right people in place to do the work. I would say we have an outstanding team. We have a very strong leadership team. We added a couple pieces. We now have a SEL, a social emotional learning coordinator, who is dynamic, and she kind of helps lead that work, and she liaisons with Concentric and the school administrators to make sure that the work is getting done.
We'll talk about you, Miss Bolden.
Right. And so and then we just we followed the process. Now there are times where side conversations needed to be had, and those conversations were had to help people understand the importance of what we were doing and why, and to how and for how to explain how they could get back on track. And so we did that, and I think also the fact that we looked at the project and we made sure that it was manageable, right? So sometimes, you take on the flavor of the month or the latest trend, and you think, wow, this is great, and it worked here and it worked there and it worked over there. It's just gonna, plop it down here and it's gonna work. That's not always the case. And so you have to really, study, the project, the initiative. You have to really know what it is you're looking for. Again, going back to purpose.
Good. Yes.
And then you had to be very intentional about, the processes, and then also making sure you have the right people in place to execute. And I would say, that we've been very fortunate to have the right people in place to execute the plan. And I think, and after that, it runs like it's supposed to run, with precision and efficiency, and which is, I'm all about being efficient. We're not wasting energy, and we're just really making sure we're doing the work. And then we're also looking to make sure that we're getting the results that we need to get. And if that happens, then, success begets success. And so, it kind of, continues to work on its own for the most part.
And what's amazing is, I think I shared this with you, is that you're one of the very few superintendents that I actually see an email from that you're looking at the outcome data. Like you're literally, I'm seeing the emails. How about this? Sounds good, but why is this one lower than this? I mean, like the intentionality, even like when we first started working together,
Right.
you were very intentional. I like to think that the service is absolutely needed everywhere, but you were very intentional in the scope, the growth, and what you wanted done and how you were going to measure it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, it's critical. How do we educate students if they're not in school?
Mm-hmm.
And so we see the partnership with Concentric as essential because you're helping us to, re-engage students. You're also helping us to find out what barriers, what issues might families be experiencing, and where can we help? Because ultimately, children need to be in school.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely critical. And then the other piece is, return on investment, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we're spending
Mm-hmm.
taxpayers' dollars.
Mm-hmm.
What's the return?
Yes.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Absolutely.
So looking at it from those two perspectives, that's why I'm so intentional about the work and monitoring the data and ensuring that we're on track and we're getting the results that we need to get, because again, it's absolutely critical that we have students in school learning from some of the best educators that I've seen in my career and getting them to where they need to be.
No, I appreciate. I've learned so much personally about you, about even the shared things that we've never even spoken about. So whether it be Chancellor Williams, I got my master's at Temple under Molefe Asante, and I mean it's the maturation, but the consciousness, and then real like understanding that you went through every step. You went through the student teaching. You were a teacher. You were a director of literacy. You know what I mean? Principal, and then. What you're 12, 13 years into your superintendencies?
Yeah, just completing my 12th year as superintendent.
Wow. I want to thank you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for the partnership. Also, thank you for helping me grow as an educator, but then as a business owner. The accountability that the early accountability and the continued accountability just helps us continue to get better and service children. But it was a pleasure, Dr. Stile Simmons.
Same here.
I just love the engagement. It shows, it's validation for us that it works when it works. I remember, lastly having a conversation with a group of superintendents, and I said, I don't know how he's doing it. Just go ask him, because I just don't know. And that's why, I wanted that to be shared, because I just didn't know. I said, wow, how are we getting 80 over here and 15 over here, and we're doing the same thing? And so, I encourage everybody that we partner with, please contact Dr. Stile Simmons at Westwood to figure out the process of execution. And just thank you for taking your time. You did stop by. You were on spring break, and thank you. I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Yep, my
I
pleasure.
appreciate you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. And as usual, you can follow us on concentric.world for all of our content. Giving you a heads up, we dropped Dear Baltimore. I hope everyone logged on and downloaded it and looked at it. But while Baltimore helped form me, Detroit has shaped me. We have Dear Detroit coming out very soon, because you can't have Concentric without Detroit. What up, though, to everybody. See you soon. Thank you for tuning in.